what do you think some of the most significant challenges with this whole develop and grow process are in existing organizations? How do we transition those? But we can't transition them unless we know what the problem is. So what do you think some of the biggest challenges are at the moment?
There's a couple of things to bear in mind for me at the moment. I think the first one is we need to change our perspective on why an ecosystem needs to learn, because an ecosystem needs to learn in order to survive and in order to be able to adapt and in order to be able to capture the opportunities that is on the horizon. And I say that because I still see in a lot of organizations today, learning is seen as a benefit to employees. It's seen as an activity that has to happen. And it's usually seen as something that takes place when there is time for it, or it's utilized as a lever in the employment relationship, as opposed to a mission critical activity for the ecosystem to be able to evolve. I love your terminology that you've utilized around, employees as participants, etc. I would go one step further. I think in future, in an environment where there's shortage of critical skill, we'll even see employees as volunteers within an ecosystem. Yes, there will be some monetary reward, etc., the normal things in the employment relationship. But the question should be, if I have a critical skill, why am I going to volunteer my skill set, my time here in this ecosystem, if not somewhere else? And then the reality in how employment relationships are evolving is I might belong to more than one ecosystem at the same time, because that degree of membership is starting to change. So I think the first change is why we learn and what is learning and what is development. We need to help organizations shift, with regards to that. I think there is a critical role there for culture and leadership, because often, and we see that as AIHR when we work with a lot of organizations, they usually ask, how do I create a learning organization? I don't have the time, I don't have the resources. And, people are always running around the fact that, oh, my senior people can't spend time educating themselves on what is new. I want something that's immediate, bite size in the moment. Now, there must be some truth to that. I think there is some, realities that we need to acknowledge. But on the other side, all that is telling me is learning to develop, to survive is not a priority for you in your organization. So either we're not doing a great job of linking and showcasing the benefit to you on that side, or in your leadership mentality and mindset that you've got in the organization, you see development as a lever that you pull for other people and not necessarily as a way of life within the broader organization. And I think that's a mindset issue that we need to think about first before we even go further than that.
I like that, because I think you raised the point around short-termism. And, one of the about creating a sustainable ecosystem, the concept of sustainability is act like you're going to be there in the future. Don't act like you're the only person, I'm here for the next 5 minutes and that's all that counts. So do you think that the fact that there isn't enough focus, or the mindset isn't right, because it's so short-termist around this, we don't have these skills, teach that person that skill, and the investment in time to look up, and as you said, how is learning something that allows you to respond to what's on the horizon? Because like with most things, if I'm trying to learn something, it's going to take a period of time to become proficient at it. So a little bit like catching the bus, and the bus goes past and then you get the timetable. You kind of need it the other way around. You need to know where the bus is going to be so that you can be there on time. Okay, cool. So that and that mindset. So where do you think that mindset starts? The short-termism.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, I think a lot of organizations, especially in, trying economic times, and everybody, do more with less under constant pressure from, shareholders, stakeholders, etc. We have fallen a little bit into the mentality of, if I fix this now, I will be okay for one day. And I think we've fallen into that mentality to say, if I can just get through this, and usually this is tied to a couple of activities or things that need to happen, I will be able to look up and look beyond that. The reality is the world is too complex these days, right? So I think it's kind of ingrained a little bit. And I believe the root cause of that is look at what we celebrate and what we acknowledge as what good looks like at lower levels when people enter the organization. We celebrate efficiency. We celebrate getting things done in the shortest space of time at the highest level of quality. We don't actually celebrate, somebody taking a step back and saying, but there's different ways to do this. Let me not just jump into what I've always done. Let me try something different and learn from that process. It takes me a day longer. In the bigger scheme of things, what's a day worth? But I think we actually ingrain that very much into the working culture right from the get-go at the bottom of the organization, which is why when people start operating at levels where they are supposed to work on a longer time horizon, it almost is as if you have to unlearn certain habits and behaviors that has been taught right from the get-go, in terms of shifting up. Some of the best CEOs I've worked with in the past was very aware of which time horizon is more important for them to focus on. And one of the CEOs even commented to me the one day, which I thought was very, very valuable from his side. He said, I'm very prepared to disappoint a lot of people in the short term. And I asked him, but what do you mean by that? He said, because I should not be thinking about short-term elements. So the moment that I step into that level of work, I know I'm doing something wrong or something else is broken in the bigger organization if that is what I need to do. So I think we just need to start thinking slightly differently about how does work at lower levels of the organization, and how can we start developing that type of mindset much earlier in careers, so that when people do get to strategic levels where we do want them to experiment on longer term time horizons, it's not something strange or new that they're doing for the very first time, but they've developed this ability to kind of jump between different levels of complexity and different levels and time horizons. Because I don't think we pay attention to that, which is why I believe we struggle with strategy translation in organizations. We're great at putting down the strategy, but to translate that into medium short term, where do we start today? I think that's really, really difficult. So, in short, I think it starts earlier in the career. I think it starts with celebrating different types of behaviors. And I actually think it starts also by creating some space in the way that we think about capacity and work in an organization, to not just immediately measure the things that's in front of us, but thinking about that in a longitudinal way and looking at how do these things actually play out over time, as opposed to just in the moment.